No, I don't believe Veta has ever taken a drink.
Well, I'm going to surprise you. I think she has, and does constantly.
I am certainly surprised.
But it's not her alcoholism that's going to be the basis of my diagnosis of her case. Well, it's much more serious than that. Well, it's when she began talking so emotionally about this big white rat, Harvey. I believe she called him Harvey.
Well, Harvey is his name.
Well, she claimed you're persecuting her with this Harvey.
I haven't been persecuting her with Harvey. Veta shouldn't feel that way. And now, Doctor, before we go any further, I must insist you let me in.
Well, let me make my point first, Mr. Dowd. This trouble of your sister's, it didn't spring up overnight. Her condition stems from trauma.
From what?
Well, from trauma. It's spelled T-R-A-U-M-A. It means shock. Well, there's nothing unusual about it. There's the birth trauma, the shock to the act of being born.
That's one we never get over.
You have a nice sense of humor, Mr. Dowd. Well, hasn't he, Miss Kelly?
Oh, yes, Doctor.
May I say the same about both of you?
So, your sister's condition is serious, but I can't help her. She must, however, remain out here temporarily.
Well, I've always wanted Veta to have everything she needs.
Exactly.
But I wouldn't want Veta to stay out here unless she liked it out here and wanted to stay here.
Well, of course. Did Wilson get what he went after?
Oh, yes, Doctor.
And what was Mrs. Simmons' attitude?
Not unusual, Doctor.
Now then, well, Mr. Dowd, if this were an ordinary delusion, well, something reflected on the memory picture, in other words, if she were seeing something she'd seen once, well, that would be one thing. But this is much more serious than that. Why, it stands to reason no one has ever seen a white rabbit 6 feet high.
Oh, not very often, Doctor.
Well, I like you, Dowd.
Well, I like you too, Doctor. And Miss Kelly. I like her too.
So, your sister must remain here temporarily. Under these circumstances, I would commit my own grandmother.
Oh, does your grandmother drink too?
That's just an expression. Now, if you'll sign these temporary commitment papers as next of kin, it's just a formality.
Oh, you'd better have Veta do that, Doctor. She does all the signing and managing for the family. She's good at it.
Well, we can't disturb her now.
Well, perhaps I better discuss this with Judge Gaffney.
Well, explain it all to him later. Tell him I advised it. And it isn't as if you couldn't drop by any time and make inquiries. We'd be glad to have you. Tell you what, I'll make out a full visitor's pass for you. When would you like to come back? Say Wednesday or Friday?
Well, you and Miss Kelly have been so pleasant, I could come back right after dinner. About an hour.
Well, we're kind of busy, but I guess that's all right.
Well, I don't really have to go now. I'm not very hungry.
Delighted to have you stay then. Miss Kelly and I have to get upstairs, though. There's plenty of work to do. But I can tell you what you might like to do.
What might I like to do?
Well, we don't usually do this. But to put in your mind that your sister really is in good hands, why don't you have a look around? If you'll go through that door right over there, just beyond the staircase, you'll find the occupational therapy room down the hall. Beyond that, the conservatory, the library, and the diet kitchen.
Well, for Vita's sake, I believe I better do that, Doctor.
Very well, then. And it's been a great pleasure to have this little talk with you, Mr. Dowd.
I've enjoyed it myself, Doctor, meeting you and Miss Kelly.
And I will say that for a layman, you sure show an unusually acute perception into psychiatric problems.
Was that a fact? I never thought I knew anything about it. Nobody does, do they?
Well, the good psychiatrist is not found under every bush.
Well, you have to pick the right bush. And now, since we seem to have enjoyed this so much, let us keep right on. I'd like to invite you to come with me down to Charlie's place and have a drink. You know, when I enjoy people, I like to stay right with them.
Well, sorry, but we're on duty right now. Give us a rain check. Some other time we'd be glad to.
When?
I can't say right now. Miss Kelly and I don't even get off work till 10 o'clock tonight.
Well, let us go down to Charlie's at 10 o'clock tonight.
Well,
And you, Miss Kelly?
I think that...
Dr. Chumley doesn't approve of members of the staff fraternizing. But since you have been so understanding, perhaps we could manage.
I'll pick you up here at 10 o'clock tonight in a cab, and the four of us will spend a happy evening. You know, I want you both to become friends with a very dear friend of mine. You said later on, so later on it will be. Bye now.
Whew! I can breathe again.
Boy, that was a close shave, all right, but that man seemed to be a pretty reasonable sort of fellow. You know, that man was proud. What he has to be proud of, I don't know. But I played up to that pride. You know, you can get to almost anybody that way if you want to. Now, I must look in on that Simmons one.
Dr. Sanderson, you said you can get to almost anybody that way if you want to. How could you do that?
Oh, well, it takes years of study, Kelly. Years of specialized training. There's only one thing I don't like about this whole Dowd business, though.
What's that?
Having to make this date with him. course, he has left here as a good friend and booster of the Sanitarium, so I guess I'll have to keep it. But you don't have to go.
Oh.
Well, there's no point to it. I'll go in, have a drink with him, pat him on the back, and be on my way. Besides, I have a date tonight.
Oh yes, by all means. I didn't intend on going anyway. The idea bored me stiff. I wouldn't go if I never went anywhere ever again. I wouldn't go if my life depended on it.
What's the matter with you, Kelly? What are you being so emotional about?
He may be a peculiar man with funny clothes, but he knows how to act. His manners were perfect.
Oh, I saw you give him that doll puss stare. I didn't miss that.
He wouldn't sit till I sat down. He told me I was lovely and he called me dear. I would go have a drink with him if you weren't going.
Well, sure you would. And look at him. He doesn't work. All he does is hang out in bars. All that corny bowing and getting up out of his chair every time a woman makes a move. Why, he's as outdated as a cast iron deer. But you would sit with him in a bar and let him flatter you. Well, you're such a wonderful girl, Kelly.
Now you listen here, you!
Dr. Sanderson, Miss Kelly.
Yes, Doctor.
Tell the gardener to prune more carefully around my prized dahlias along the fence by the main road. They'll be ready for cutting next week. The difficulty of the woman with the big rabbit, has that been smoothed over?
Oh, yes, Doctor. Well, I spoke to her brother and he was quite reasonable.
Well, I've had many patients out here who saw animals. I have never before had a patient with an animal that large.
Yeah, Doctor. She called him Harvey.
Harvey. Unusual name for an animal of any kind. I mean, Harvey's a man's name. I've known several men in my day named Harvey, but I have never before heard of any type of animal whatsoever with that name. The case has an interesting phase, Doctor.
Yes, Doctor.
I will now go upstairs with you and we'll look in on this woman. It may be we can use my formula 977 on her. I will give you my advice in prescribing the treatments.
Well, thank you, Doctor.
And now, if I may ask, what is this hat and coat doing here? Whose is it?
I don't know. Do you know Kelly? Was it Mr. Dowd's?
Well, he had his hat on, Doctor. Perhaps it belongs to a relative of one of the patients.
Well, bring me the hat. There may be some form of identification. What's this? What is this? 2 holes cut in the crown of this hat, you see?
That's strange.
It's some new fad. Put them away, hang them up, just get them out of here.
Dr. Chumley.
Oh, there you are.
How was every little old thing?
It's fair, thank you, Wilson, fair.
Look, someone's going to have to give me a hand with this Simmons dame. Order a restraining jacket or something. She's terrible. Forgot about me, didn't you? Well, that's all right. I got to course it off all by myself.
Wilson, we're going upstairs right now to look in on this patient.
Well, she's in the hydro tub now, Doctor. Oh, my God, I let the water running on.
Willie, remember your promise. Hello, Dr. Sanderson. Willie, you haven't forgotten Dr. McClure's cocktail party. We promised them faithfully.
That's right. Well, I have to go upstairs on the patient. I'll be down shortly.
Late to the party. I'm dying to see the inside of that house. Good evening.
Oh, good evening.
I'm Mrs. Chumley, Dr. Chumley's wife.
I'm happy to know that. Dowd is my name, Elwood P. Let me give you one of my cards. If you should want to call me at that one. Don't call me at that one, that's the old one.
Thank you. Is there something I can do for you?
What did you have in mind?
You seem to be looking for someone.
Yes, I am. I'm looking for Harvey. I went off without him.
Harvey, is he a patient here?
Oh, no, nothing like that.
Does he work here?
Oh, no. He's what you might call my best friend. He's also a puka. He came out here with Veta and me this afternoon.
Where was he the last time you saw him?
He was in that chair there, and his hat and coat were on the hat rack.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any hat and coat around here now. Perhaps he left.
Well, apparently, I don't see him around here anywhere.
What was that word you just said? Hookah?
Yes, that's it.
Is that something new?
No, as I understand it, it's something very old.
Well, really? I had never happened to hear it before.
Well, I'm not too surprised at that. I hadn't heard it myself until I met him. I do hope you will have the opportunity to meet him. I'm sure he would be quite taken with you.
Oh, really? Well, that's very nice of you to say so, I'm sure.
Not at all. If Harvey happens to like people, he expresses himself very definitely. If he's not particularly interested, he just sits there like an empty chair or an empty space on the floor.